Hi, I'm Dan from Angel Refrigeration. This is a training video for the everlasting MEATico all-in-one controller that is found on the climate control cabinets. All-in-one cabinets are designed to control temperature, humidity and airflow for a variety of products that include charcuterie production, cheese maturation and dry aging. What you've got here is a 7-inch EverTouch controller that is on the standby. So as you turn the controller on, it will look something like this. It will show you the current temperature inside the cabinet, the current humidity inside the cabinet. The program that was previously running is showing on here, so 23 degrees and 85% humidity. You see there's a big pause button in there to show that it's paused. On these controllers, red signifies off, green means on. So if you see here, it's paused. So the red shows that that's actually the countdown of the cycle, how far in that phase it's gone round. So that's why it's in red, because it's paused. The Wi-Fi connection is currently not connected, so that's why it's red. On this screen, you'll see the date, the time, what particular program you are in, and when it's running, it will actually show you the name of the particular phase in there as well. On this screen, again, this is your main standby screen. This is the screen that we've shown in general operation when you're not actually using the controller. It will show you, again, using the green red, any program or any functionality that is actually operational at that point will highlight as green. So for example, internal lights, fans, it's a defrost cycle, refrigeration system is on, it's asking for water, and so on. So when we first turn the cabinet, you slide to unlock the screen. Again, this is to try to stop anyone accidentally touching it and either pausing it or turning it off or turning lights off or changing it as by accident. On the first screen on here, you can set the time and date. So this cabinet is preset. Down here, we can do transfers. So on the top of the unit, near the back of the controller, there is a USB port. So you can transfer information such as the parameters of the cabinet, recipes, or you can import them and so on in a CSV file format, ideal for Excel. This has been largely superseded by the fact you've got the app on your phone, as long as you're connected to Wi-Fi, because you get a similar data set on there. You can run the cabinet in several different languages if you so wish. Again, I'm going to skip over this a little bit, but there is a password to get into the underlying parameters of the unit. This is more for your refrigeration engineer during service to check underlying functionality of the cabinet is working well. As the user, you should not need to go in here and I say contact us for the password. From here, we'll click into here. So recipes, they fall under the bands of cheese and salami. These are your main areas. I'm going to use salami as the process because I'm going to talk in the context of charcuterie, just for programming. But the principles of setup is exactly the same whether you're doing or any product you're doing. On here, the first 6 there are factory presets. So these ones you cannot delete. See that they show a lock sign when you try and press the bin icon. The only ones I can remove are ones that have been put onto this particular cabinet that we've created ourselves. So in this context, I'm going to create a new one. So you see it's just automatically named as new recipe, simple, phase 1, and everything is pretty much switched off until you tell it to do something. So I'm just going to rename it. So I'm just going to call it test phase 1. Accept that. So obviously on this screen here, you can see the functionality you can set. You can set how long this phase is going to run for. You can set the temperature. You can set the humidity, and you can set the fan speed. You may note I've just skipped over work, rest, and recovery functions. These are more technical, more advanced settings that are rarely used in the UK. So I will do a separate video on these to explain them a little bit further. But in the case of this video, for general setup and general operation, they're not necessarily needed. So I'm going to skip over them. When I click into temperature, so given this is an absolutely brand new program, temperature is not switched on. So this is very key. In temperature and humidity, you need to make sure you press that. If it's not highlighted as green, it actually won't run. So I might set this to 25 degrees, for example. If I have it there and I just tick through, it will still say temperature's off. So it's an accident that people sometimes do that. They forget to actually click that over. So the temperature actually operates. Cold and hot differential. This is how high and low the cabinet will let the temperature drop and rise before kicking in the appropriate systems to bring the temperature back towards set point. What we are trying to do in this cabinet is get to 25 degrees on this particular phase and have an average of 25 degrees. It doesn't need to sit on 25 degrees all times forever. That's almost impossible in refrigeration. It's a balancing act in this particular cabinet. So you are going to see the temperatures and the humidity go up and down slightly. And what we are trying to achieve, I say, is the mean of 25 degrees. Cold and hot differential. A 2-degree differential is actually a good one to use. We can go as low as 1, but if you set it to say 1 degree of difference, the cabinet's going to kick refrigeration systems in, heaters on. So as the cabinet is a climate control, it is controlling climate. So it is a balancing act between temperature, humidity, airflow, the air exchange system, the defrost cycles. These are all competing to make the best environment. So if we give the cabinet a bit of leeway with cold and hot differentials, that allows that balancing act to work better. So I'm going to leave it at 2 degrees, both. So you see there, because it's switched on, 25 degrees. Duration, just let's say leave that for the 1 day for the time being. Humidity, again, remember to turn that on. The preset here says 5%. That's a little bit on the low side, because again, it's balancing act we're trying to aim for here. But if you say set to 80%, your average will be 80% over a period of time. But if we go at 5% even above and below, the cabinet is going to really struggle to do that, because when you're asking for humidity, the boiler kicks in, it will create some steam. That steam will be generated, it will obviously go into the cabinet, the humidity will rise quite quickly. And it will very quickly try balancing it back down again if the differential is very low, like it is on here for 5%. So general rule of thumb, set these to 10, give the cabinet a chance to do its balancing act well. So we'll tick there, 80%. And like I said earlier, I'm going to skip over work, rest, and recovery for the time being. Fan speed you can adjust. Again, generally you will find high speed will do most processes absolutely fine. It's one of the functions you can tailor should you wish, depending on what you're seeing on the product development. We'll do a new phase here. So I'm going to name it again. Test phase. You will find when you're using the controller, it requires a little bit more of a press than, say, a iPad or an iPhone, but it is still pretty reactive. So call it test 2. Again, that test 2 showing there. I'm just going to say this is going to be a 7-day cycle. Again, it will start with temperature off. Again, we're going to do making sure everything is switched on, giving the cabinet a chance. Just going to save it as 12 degrees. There. Humidity is showing us off. Again, remembering we want to give the cabinet a bit of a chance and be that balancing act it's trying to be. That climate control, not just a fridge or a humidifier, it's a balancing act. Drop the humidity to say 70%. Stick that there. So you see the fan speed's on low. Just again, it's just because we're creating the program here. I'm going to do one last phase. And I'm just going to call it test phase 3. Save. So I've created a program here, which is a set of tests. Got 3 phases that we can have. Again, using charcuterie as an idea. Okay, we've got one day of fermentation. We've got 1 day of maturation or curing, and then We're on to phase 3, which could just be more of a storing nominal program. And we'll just set it to, and don't use this as an example program. It's just the fundamentals of how you set the controller. Again, and lastly, high fan speed. So on that, from this point here, I can now save it, create a name for it. I'm going to call it test video. And save. From this point here, I can start the program. I'll go to the previous page, or I can take us back to the home page. What I'm going to do is going to take us back to the previous page, into Salami, scroll up. There's my test video. Press cancel. I can remove it. I'll get rid of that. If I click into test video, I am going to quickly start it here, just to show. Start test video. And you'll see how the screen has changed on here. And you'll probably just about make out the hum of the refrigeration system, or the fan motors have kicked in. You'll see that the name of the program has come up. It's test phase 1 from test video, the recipe. If at the moment it's trying to, actually I'll slide it open there, show you the principle. So you see the refrigeration system is kicked in straight away. Because what it's trying to do there is using the refrigeration system to actually help draw the humidity down. The fans are operational and heaters are on. Because at the moment it's more concerned about bringing the humidity down slightly rather than the temperature. And then it will flick over once the humidity is under control. Then it will flick over to temperature to bring that temperature back up again. But for the process of it actually leads me on quite nicely. So from there, we've got the central button. This is where we can stop it. By stopping the program, I can now turn it off by the plug. If you ever need to turn it off by the plug, you always must pause or stop your program. From this point, you can now turn it off. There is no physical on-off button on the cabinet, but from this point, we can now turn it off. As you see on this screen, we've got a defrost cycle that we can force it into. Again, we may possibly ask you this if you're seeing some icing on your evaporator, but it is very unlikely because this cabinet has got automatic defrost. But it is, again, if it's in defrost, if you go onto this screen, that will be highlighted as green. Air exchange is a system that's built into it, so it will, over a certain period of time, or if you particularly press this button here, it will exchange the interior air with fresh air. So as standard, every 8 hours, the cabinet will go into an air exchange cycle. This is in the parameters to remove the air and cycle in some new air. Again, I think sometimes if you're switching from a very particular product to another, along with your deep clean inside, doing an air exchange is a good manual process to get on with because it will remove some of the aromas that are in the air, which can be difficult to remove, that you might not want to transfer from, say, a traditional Italian salami to a very unique flavoured pheasant's chorizo or something along those lines. Rotation is a button we cannot press because that is a rotating carousel, which is an optional extra for the cabinet. Alarms, this is where you might find any alarms. The most common ones are if you've left the door open for too long, and there might be some high temperature alarms if you ran the cabinet for to tell a lie. For example, if you put the cabinet into standby and its last program was set to 10 degrees Celsius, but your ambient temperature in your space is 23 degrees, the cabinet will eventually get to 23 degrees while it's in standby. And the alarm might go off because the last setting it had on was at 10 degrees. So it's much warmer than it expects it should be because you've paused the program. So you will have a high temperature alarm. Again, like I say on this cabinet here, no alarms. Probes, this is just another reading for what's going on in the cabinet. The chamber temperature is the interior temperature. Chamber humidity is the interior humidity currently. The evaporator temperature is how cool the evaporator for the refrigeration system is. That will always be colder than the chamber, particularly if the refrigeration system has been on for a while. And then you've got the security temperature as well, which is the temperature at the top there. Sterilization, again, because it's blanked out, it is an optional extra that is not standard. This is UV bulbs. So if you are going to use a cabinet for dry aging, it might be beneficial to have UV bulbs on there, as they are standard fit on the MEATico meat aging cabinets for keeping bacteria away from raw meat. Again, in the processes of charcuterie, it is generally not required. Again, that's why it's blanked out. Again, we can start the program, but I'm not going to. Onto here. On the glass door, for example, here, so you see, as I said earlier, the green and red signify on and off. I've now just turned the interior lighting on. That is why it's lit up. The last one here is the graph of what's gone in the cabinet. Because there isn't a history, I only ran the cabinet for a handful of moments, it is a graph that makes no sense because there's no lines on it. But what you'll see over time is you have a time duration at the bottom, generally a full day. And you can cycle through the days on him, and then you'll see a nice smooth set of lines where it's, ignore these temperatures here, but let's say it's 0 to 30 degrees, the temperature range for the cabinet. You've set it at 20, you'll see a nice line going across there, with the occasional spike that might be linked to defrost, or I see the cabinet's gone into a bit of a balancing act. Same thing with humidity. Let's say you set to 80% humidity, you'll see a nice blue line scrolling along there, ups and downs, pretty even across the board. And then I say here, you can select the date to go back to on the screen. But again, lots of what this has been done has been taken over by the functionality of the app. So on the app, you can review the data over time. You get your general notifications on a daily basis. And you can, I say it's easier to use that than maybe on the screen, but say you wanted to show someone, you can show them on the screen. And I say it's slide to lock if you want to let it. So you see there, the light is the only thing that's functioning because we have the program paused currently. And for the time being, I'm going to go back into recipes just to show you the differences between, let's say, cheese, same difference. It's exactly the same. There's 2 factory presets, and it's just you can add or save new programs. And that is fundamentally the basics for this controller. Like I say, with all-in-one cabinets, they are, like I said several times during the video, it is always a balancing act. It is a climate control cabinet. It will work and strive to achieve the humidities and temperatures you set, but it will be over time. It will not be immediate. It requires a balancing act between the systems on the cabinet, refrigeration system, defrost cycles, drying heaters, warming heaters, the boiler, the fans, the air exchange system. All those things are running together, and they're creating the climate by having a tussle between one another to achieve what we need to. This is the first of a few videos. There'll be videos that I'll continue on to. Thank you.